we're going to call to order the December 19th, 2019 meeting of the Sebastian City Planning and Zoning Commission. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. Roth?
Here.
Mr. Simmons?
Present.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Here.
Mr. Carter?
Present.
Mr. Reyes?
Here.
Mr. Cristino?
Here.
Mr. Kizzelbosch?
Here.
Mr. Eugen?
Here.
Mr. Alvarez?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. We have a full house. Tonight's announcements, we'd like to welcome John Cristino, who is, did I say that correctly, or is
Yes,
Cristano?
You did much better than I thought.
Okay, thank you. He is joining us as an alternate member, taking the place of Mr. Motti, who has moved on to greener pastures. Welcome, and thank you for making yourself available.
These things are low.
Okay. Commissioners, you've all had an opportunity to review the meetings of our last meeting. And if you have no corrections or additions, we'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of November 21st, 2019.
A second.
Okay,
Mr. Kuzelbaum.
we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of the November 21st meeting as reported without any additions or corrections. All in favor?
Yes, say aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next order of business tonight is a quasi-judicial public hearing,
It's done.
and it is I hereby open the hearing. I'm going to ask all of the commissioners, have any of you had any ex parte communication with the applicant?
None.
No.
No.
Okay. Janet, will you give us?
Anyone who is going to talk tonight, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representation that you are about to give or present during this public hearing are truthful and accurate?
I do.
Okay. And our hearing tonight is a site plan modification for Taco Mobile Restaurant involving additional parking at 825 Sebastian Boulevard, lots 1, 2, and 3 of Block 188, Sebastian Highlands, Unit 6. Zoned commercial CR 512 zoning district. Okay. Will our applicant please make your presentation?
My name's Todd Smith. I'm the engineer of record for the Taco Mobile project. What's before you tonight is a proposal for construction of an overflow parking lot. Basically an addition of 18 parking spaces for the existing Taco Mobile that's on the south side of 512. It's been set up as a two-phase project, the first phase being an expansion of the existing parking lot. There's 2 additional parcels of property east of the existing building that the owners have purchased and want to join with the existing facility in order to create the parking lot. And the second phase is a 141 square foot expansion of basically their kitchen. The building right now has a covered area that's outside, but the roof of the structure goes across that on the west side of the building, and that's right where their kitchen is. So what they want to do is basically move the wall out to the end and enclose that like 6 by 23 foot space in order to expand their kitchen. And that's what's before you tonight, and like every site plan, we work with staff to provide drainage system to bring the entire site, including the lot 1 that the existing building's on, into total conformance with the landscape requirements and stormwater requirements and traffic control. And I'm available for any other technical questions that the board may have.
Okay.
I just have one question. I noticed that the substitution of proposed millings area to be replaced with concrete, is that correct?
No, the existing parking lot's concrete. The new parking lot is, we're proposing concrete for the drive aisle that will eventually connect to future properties that may develop to the east of this site. But the actual parking spaces, the new parking spaces with this, and the drive aisle that goes to the south, that's proposed to be constructed in Millings. Because it's overflow parking, so it's not required by code for the facility. It's strictly an overflow parking lot. And so working with the engineer representing the city, that was basically what was discussed, that as long as we put concrete down for the drive aisle for the marginal access easement across the front of the properties, millings could be done on the overflow spaces.
Can we have our staff presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Smith has described the scope of the project. I'm just going to go over a few items, factual items that could come from the staff report. He did explain about that this is a phased site plan. Phase 1 will be the additional parking lot on lots 2 and 3 to the east, and Phase 2, as I understand, will begin shortly after, but a kitchen expansion and a walkway. On page 3, we did note with the kitchen expansion, even though it's a small addition, it's going to look like the building, but at this point, we did not require any floor plan or building elevations, material information. That'll be required to be submitted and approved by staff before they can submit for building permits on that. Mr. Smith did allude that this is overflow parking. The original site plan was approved in 1996. How we calculated parking for restaurants at that time has changed from current, so they're grandfathered in. And from that site plan, they were required to provide 7 parking spaces. They provided 8. Those 8 spaces are remaining on that lot 1. So anything on lots 2 and 3 is additional parking. And as Mr. Smith explained, we were okay with then that parking being millings. We'll have concrete, though, along the front, the marginal access easement that connects all the lots. These lots are platted in Sebastian Highlands, and based on the plat, there are side yard easements. Even though these properties are 40 foot wide, they still have 6 foot easements on either side. So there are some abandonment of easements that we do need to get through, kind of house cleaning on this. So we are going to require that they abandon those easements. That's a process that goes to City Council, and they'll need to have those easements abandoned before the actual construction of the parking lot can begin. We're okay with them land clearing, but we'll need those easements abandoned before they start construction. We have received stormwater calculations for the 3 lots for the new parking area. They've been reviewed, but because it's less than 2 acres, Mr. Smith will be able to, through St. John's, instead of modifying the St. John's permit, they have a process now, it's called a self-certification, that Mr. Smith will be required to present to St. John's before they begin that construction, certifying that the stormwater has been designed according to their requirements and the city's. The The flow of the parking, the drainage from the parking is going to flow south towards the alley. The stormwater's been designed to handle that stormwater, but if there is any outfall from that, it will flow towards the alleyway. We have required, and they have added to that plan, that drainage plan, on the south side of the pavement of the alley, there'll be a swale they'll work with our stormwater department, how deep, the scope, and that'll run towards Melrose. There's a catch basin and some drainage structures there that will direct that water to get that. That's only for overflow. The stormwater that's on site will handle the required amount per our code in St. John's. We've required around that stormwater pond also, because it is a shallow pond, we requested a kind of a split rail fence that'll go around that stormwater pond so that we don't have additional trucks or parking in the stormwater area. It'll remain clean and free for stormwater. The code does also require, again, 40-foot wide lots. Indian River County came back and said, we're not going to give each lot its own driveway access. So they have a master curb cut plan, and we require this easement that connects all those properties. So we will need that paperwork also before they can land clear. Though it's a small project, we had a lot of house cleaning, mostly just requirements for the conditions. I did give you by your seat, there's a kind of a revised recommendation, and I'll go ahead and read each one of those, hopefully quickly into the record, but we'd like to modify and correct a couple. We had to add one. Staff recommends approval of this site plan. It does meet the Land Development Code, Comprehensive Plan, and the 512 Overlay District requirements. The conditions that we are requesting is that the project engineer submit a copy to staff, his 10-2 exemption certification. The survey did indicate on Lot 1 that one of the easements was abandoned. They just indicated it on the wrong easement, so we would like a corrected survey that shows that the Lot 1 easement has been corrected. Currently, it shows on Lot 3. We would like some corrected surveys. The paperwork, house cleaning paperwork, we need all the lots combined. We would like a copy of the Declaration of Unity title before issuance of the land clearing permit. The required grant of easement, we'll need a copy of that, recorded copy before issuance of the land clearing permit. Approval by City Council of the abandonment of easement before the parking area can begin. And before submittal of the building permits for the Phase 2 kitchen expansion, we would like copies of the, we'll approve those building elevations, materials, in accordance with the 512 Overlay District requirements. And the added condition has to do with some safety traffic signage that we would like added. And I do even have a slight correction from the copy that I gave you. Number 7 should read, additional traffic safety signs shall be installed as follows. 3 FDOT 9-button delineator signs at the east end of the access easement, and that's to prevent traffic from going off of that easement onto the vacant lot to the east. A right turn only sign added to the stop sign at the alley exit. A one-way arrow sign, instead of right arrow, it should say a one-way arrow sign pointing west, installed on the south side of the alley, pavement across from the exit drive, and all that signage shall be maintained by the property owner. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Questions from our commissioners?
I have a couple of questions, please.
Okay.
You say the existing site has 8 parking space. It shows 7 here. Existing lot.
The existing site had 7 and we're,
There's some parking next to the dumpster on
Yeah,
the
there
south
is.
side of the building.
yeah.
Okay, it's not calling out anything here. All right. So the purpose of 2 type of surface is as a control the drainage, parking surface, asphalt and concrete? What's the
Sure,
reason?
anytime that the city allows a pervious driving surface, it's always better from a drainage standpoint. It decreases the amount that runs off the surface.
Okay.
Since this is an overflow area and it's not going to be used full-time,
Okay,
it seems like an appropriate use for the millings.
okay. On this driveway going to the east, if you see the grade at the end of the driveway, they're same thing, so it's flowing to the east. I think you have to change the grade there a little bit. It's say 22 and a half, both ends. So
What grades are you talking about?
the driveway, which is touching to the east property,
Right, it goes from 21-2 back onto the site at 21, the
Same.
existing grades, and then,
no, I'm talking about new grades.
right, 22-5, yes,
And both are 22.5.
yeah.
So where the water gonna go?
Well,
So the
yeah,
north end should be 22.4, so it flow to the track, stormwater track.
yeah, it
I mean,
will-
just a minor correction.
No,
there.
I know what you're saying, it will flow southward across that driveway, but,
It's
mean-
coming from south to the north. That's just flowing there.
yeah, I mean, it will drain from the 2265 down to the 22.5 on the south edge, but we can pick up
Okay.
one corner a little bit higher.
All right, on these control structures, in the north track, you have top elevation 21.45. So that will be all the time submerged the water will be there in a pipe all the time?
A control structure, you say, in the north track? I only have a control structure in the south track.
You have both places, north and south on a pipe.
Your 24-inch,
Are you talking about the one that's on the existing lot?
No, the new one,
proposed, right? That's
proposed, yeah.
on lot 3.
I don't have a control structure on the north side. That's
That
the
was
top
a
of bank elevation.
Nyloplast drain basin,
What's that?
the new drain basin on the north track.
Okay, yeah, the Nyloplast basin, yeah, it's not a control structure, but
Yeah.
it's just an equalization
It's
pipe.
an equalizer
Yes,
basin there.
yes.
So is there any reason to have that elevation, top elevation of the basin?
Is there what?
What's the reason to have that elevation? You could have the elevation 22.45 if you want.
Well, no, because then it would be overspilling the bank. The whole point of that basin is so water, as it fills up in the smaller storage tract on the north, that it, before it overtops that bank, that it goes into the top of that catch basin, so it comes into the bigger southern tract.
No, the reason I'm saying this way, you have more capacity in the north track. You have more volume you can control in that thing.
I have the same amount of volume
Okay.
regardless of where that top elevation is. Water will equalize and rise all the way up to
It's just a
2245.
suggestion, you know, it's
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
it's your design, that's
Yeah.
fine with me.
Yeah,
And other thing is dry retention, right?
yes,
And after how many hours it will recover? The whole
72.
one? 72 hours? Within 72 or after 72 hours?
No, within 72. That's what's required for it to be dry again within 72 hours.
I have the drainage calculation, it's not showing the drawdown analysis. So I couldn't see anywhere at what hours it will recover it.
I submitted the calculations to the
Okay.
city engineer. I don't have the drainage calculations with me, but
No, it's a very
we
nice
submitted a
design.
moderate flood route, groundwater mounting analysis
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Schulte.
It's very nice
Yeah.
design, I just want to see.
Yeah,
it
no,
work.
it's within 72.
72
I mean, that's required for the 10-2
Yes.
certification with
Yes,
DEP.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's all I have question.
I have one question. I notice there's a lot of trees on these two lots to the north or the east, however you want to call that.
Right.
And I went by there today, and I noticed some of them have, I guess it's orange ribbon wrapped around them. How many of those trees are going to stay? I know some of them are slash pines, but I noticed on the plan, there's an oak and some palm trees on
Yeah, we
on the
did our best to
surveys.
try to save his money, and that's kind of why we have those diagonal spaces.
Okay.
As you go south on the drive aisle. I'm assuming you have the landscape plan, I mean, you can see the amount of trees that are being taken out. They have an X room, so obviously most of them are right in the center of the parking lot. The big oaks, we try to design the parking lot to save the bigger oak trees and basically remove palm trees and pine trees.
Okay, but you're going to save the oak tree,
We're
right?
saving the oak. You can see the one that's up there at the northeast corner, right at the corner of the north drainage track. And the biggest oak on the property is, there's two of them, actually three of them, down in the southeast corner of, I guess you'd call it Lot 2. So that's kind of why we put the angled parking spaces there with the millings. And then there's another oak that sits right on the front of the building to the northeast of that corner, so we're saving that oak.
There's also right to the right of the plan, there's an existing landscape credit chart.
Yeah, you can
that
see on
shows
the
you,
chart, and
so-
I don't think we're taking out any oaks. I think it's all pines and palm trees.
Okay.
And usually with the palms, we try to make an attempt to relocate them, because, you know, they have a bulb structure, so it's easier
Right.
to pop them out and put them in somewhere else. The pine trees are tougher to deal
Yeah,
with. They
yeah.
usually come out and grind the stumps.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. M, questions?
I have a couple questions. It's about the right turn only in the alley, that's at the.
Mr. Reyes, could you turn on your mic and get your,
apologize.
thank you.
They're low anyhow, they can,
They can probably hear me without it, but that's okay.
it doesn't get on the
They could raise it a little bit. Volume? The additional recommendations, number 7, the right turn only sign added to the stop sign at the alley exit. Is that at the stop sign at Melrose Lane?
No, the driveway that's from the additional parking that's exiting onto.
Coming out of the property then?
Yes, on the south side, so when you get to that driveway on the other side of the road, there'll be an arrow that says, right turn only, one way.
Okay. Yeah, I was concerned on that one too.
And the right arrow sign, that will be in the alley at the stop sign? You're forcing a right turn only there now?
It's a
At
one-way
that-
alley.
It runs east to west. You travel west on that
Right,
alley.
the intersection, the alley that typically people take to Melrose Lane, it can go either left or right there.
I believe there's already signage there,
Oh, there is?
city signage that says you can't turn from Melrose onto that alley.
So Melrose in the alley, there's a do not enter sign on Melrose, so you cannot turn left off Melrose into
I'm
the
coming
alley.
out of the new property, out of the new parking, and going west to the stop sign. I can only make a right there now?
No. This has nothing to do with that stop sign.
Okay,
This
so
is
we're
only
still
under the
on the
stop sign
property.
in their
So we're
parking
still on the
lot.
property. Okay,
That makes
that
sense.
makes sense. I agree with Mr. Kissenbosch on some of these elevations. You probably raise it and send it to that north track. Phase 2, I can ask questions in reference to phase 2. The kitchen that's gonna be, I guess you're gonna square off the building there possibly?
That's correct.
What is your side setback there on, is it 25 feet there on that side?
I believe that is in the staff report. It is a corner lot. It's 10 feet. So
So you
their
got
address is Sebastian
plenty.
Boulevard, so it's 74 feet facing 512, but facing west, it's 10 feet.
Okay,
For
so
secondary
that-
front yard.
That eliminates that concern of mine. My other concern is, that area between that covered kitchen and the picket fence is actually being used with tables. What is the code on that? It's not shown at all, and I know, because I use this place a lot, and I like sitting out there. Is that legal, what they're doing out there?
It should, when they come in with phase 2, we'll have them add it to the floor plan. It will be additional seating area, which will
So-
require additional parking, which they're adding on lot 2 and 3. So it will be covered with this parking, but we can redo those calculations when they come in with the phase 2 and add that as seating area and calculate parking for it.
So the seating area there is really close to the right-of-way there. So we'll actually ask for some type of protection from the right-of-way of the road.
If it was
mean-
covered, it would have to meet setbacks if there was a canvas or an awning or anything over it, but it is just under the trees at this point. I believe they've
Okay.
just put down some pervious stone there. So like I say, we can add that as another condition too, that when they come in for the phase 2, we'll calculate the parking needs.
No need, I was just curious as how that's gonna come together. The alleyways coming into Melrose, actually here and further down where the barber shop is, another plan, they flood really bad. It seems like we're throwing more water that way. Oh no, you got a high point there right at the, we're trying to keep it in. Is there anything we can do during these site plan phases to enhance these alleyways?
Well, the code's required that they keep all of their stormwater on site, which they do. But if
Yeah,
there is some
yes,
outfall,
yes.
that is why we requested, working with our stormwater department, it was their requirement that they put that south side swale along the pavement, along the alley. And that will, so in essence, if there is overflow, some water will flow to the south side. Because there is a catch basin, there's a drainage structure at the Melrose stop sign.
It's flooding with conditions now, without the parking lot being raised. Same thing's happening up the road a little bit. So these alleyways are becoming lakes, canals with these signs. We need to do something to protect the residents adjoining there. I think a little more off-site work needs to be done with some of these site plans.
So they are doing off-site work, as she mentioned. Right now, there's not a swell on either side of that alley going up towards Melrose. And so part of their condition is they're gonna have to create a swell and get that water to that basin. Right now, it's sheet flows off the property and the existing property into Melrose, or into the alley. They're gonna be required to make a grade and a positive drainage to that basin.
Great, I understand
I
that.
can also add to that too, in that because this site is right there at the intersection of Melrose, we are okay with this traffic exiting, but that alleyway is usually not for normal traffic. If this was a mid-block site where you still had to go farther, we would not be allowing their overflow from this parking lot to exit onto the alley. But it's a short distance, 100 feet to that intersection, and it is gonna benefit. Right now, the restaurant is doing good, and at lunchtime, if you've seen that Melrose, a lot of the landscaping and the trucks are there. So this is gonna help that traffic situation on Melrose with parking. But I think any other site in the middle of that block would not be able to exit their traffic onto that alley. It's strictly a service alley, used for city cars, and there's not a lot of trucks and loading on that, off of that alley as it is.
But as far as for drainage it's not an issue because their retention meet the requirement. It's just.
He does, right.
It's just, it's
He's
25
great
year
with
storm.
his site plan. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get the city to recognize
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
some of these site plans need to take on a little off-site work.
Yeah.
We take on the burden trying to get these swales of ours to drain, and they're flooding even more with our approved site plans. So that's just my comment. Your site plan looks great. I have no further questions.
Yeah.
Actually, I do have one more further question. I apologize. On this survey, it states that this site is in flood zone X per the flood insurance rate map. I think that map's been updated. It's calling out a 2012 map.
No, that is the last map
That
that
is
we've
the-
done, yes.
the most recent
We
one,
may
yes.
have one coming in 2020, a few panels are being revised, and it's been about a 3-year process, but that was the updated. The previous maps were 1998 and 96, so the 2012 is the
So
most
this
recent
is the
map.
revised ones that the city was also involved in with FEMA?
Yes,
to
2012.
help the resident. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
I have a couple of questions. We're looking at phase 2, and we're hearing about the improvements, but we're being asked to approve it, and we don't know what they are. And that's basically what the purview of the Plan Commission is. Relative to that existing building, it's been said it's gonna be squared off, but it looks to me like there's part of it's going to be covered, if I understand the cross-hatching right, and the rest of it is still gonna be open on the top. Is that correct?
No, the west side of the building right now has about a 6-foot open area that has roof over it,
6.5.
6.5. That's going to be enclosed. So the only area that's going to be covered with roof that's not enclosed would be just the standard 2-foot overhang past
And then,
that point.
well, the southern part of that is still going to remain open.
That's correct, but the southern part doesn't have roof over it.
Okay.
The roof structure stops right around the middle of the building there. So that southern part that you're talking about, that's this open sidewalk right now.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
But I just wanted clarification on that to be sure.
Yeah, we're only enclosing the part that's under the existing roof that stops around the middle of the building.
On other site plans, we see elevations, there aren't any here. And that's a concern that I have. I think we should have them when these come to the commission, so we approve it, and we don't end up getting a black eye later on.
Right.
It's not your fault. It should be addressed, I think, in the future. I think it should have been in this one.
We added to the staff report, Mr. Roth, and we did make it a condition of approval. So it does state, one of the conditions is that before they even come in with building permits, for submittal of their building permit application, that they would submit the floor plan, the materials, the colored elevations that we usually get, and staff can approve them, or if you'd like us to bring them back to you, but we did require that as a condition to
Yeah,
get that
item
before.
six.
So it came in without Phase 2 on it, and then Phase 2 was added later?
No, but it's 141 square foot addition, and at this point, to go through the cost to get the floor plan and those structural plans put together, we felt it was just a kitchen expansion, it wasn't gonna affect parking, that's why we had presented it this way. It's certainly your decision, but we had.
The only difference is that what you see right now on the west side of the kitchen, the windows, that wall is just being pulled out.
I understand all of that.
Expansion?
Huh?
Is it a structural
Well,
expansion?
whenever you enclose exterior to interior, it's structural.
Yeah, we
So
know
we're
that
gonna, we're gonna pull that wall out 6 feet. So obviously, it's gonna, any new wall below those windows will be painted the same color.
That'll be
as-
the new setback for that building, or tie back.
What's that?
That'll be the new tie to the sideline on that building.
Well, that setback already exists because there's a column holding the roof up.
Right clear of it.
What's that?
Because of a column?
Yeah, the roof, the setback is not changing at all, because there's a structural column that's holding up that roof over the covered area. We're not going past that, so that setback is there, it's established. That's why we're only enclosing up to the columns. But it'll be painted the same color as the building. The west side will look exactly like it does right now. If I drew a two-dimensional elevation, it'd be like just as if you were standing on the west side of that building right now. It'll be the same window configuration, only it's gonna be out 6 feet. From the front, from 512, that there, a window, you can only use so much in 6 feet. We'll probably add one window to match the same windows in the side. So it'd be like a knee wall, a beam over the window. But, you know, we will,
It's very, I understand. It's very
Yeah.
Well,
nice.
I understand your explanation and description on it, but it's not here on paper for us to look at and approve. My point. Number 2, perhaps I need definition from the staff. What is 3F.9 button delineator sign?
That's an FDOT standard sign, I know, but it's triangle, it'll have some reflectors on it, you'll see them on posts, and it's just gonna prevent vehicles from going any farther off the edge of that pavement
Okay.
onto that lot to the east.
Thank you.
Danger sign.
It's designed to alert the traveling
Okay, just
public. to the road.
my point.
Detail on the plans of it.
Um,
Sign and marking.
As regards the fence that's there on the south property line, you mentioned, and I've seen tables there. Is that going to be, that's a question of the staff, is that going to be a question on that Phase 2 to show where those are and how they're used? Because if I'm looking at this, and I didn't honestly pay a lot of attention when I was there and looked, is that going to be actually absorbing a parking place?
No, there's under some landscaping right now, they put some gravel down it, and I think it's basically just some picnic tables. Yes, technically it should be considered seating area, and we can calculate that in when Phase 2 comes in. They'll just have to give us a dimension of where those picnic tables are. We calculate it 1 space per 100 square feet, 1.5 spaces. They'll have it because they're adding the extra parking, but we can have that added to the official site plan sheet.
And are
we'll get the
tables acceptable that close to the property line?
If you remember, the elevation's up pretty high, because it's not under a structure. If it had a covering or a canopy, then yes, it would have to meet that 10-foot setback. But right now, it's just under the trees, and there's no structure, so there is no
Okay,
setback for the
I'm
tables
just
themselves.
Following up on a question I had, and the existing fence that's there is going to remain, there's going to be no new fencing added on that south property line, and then it goes up a little bit north. Will that be used in the future when additional lots are developed to the east of that?
So some of the existing site plans already along 512, what we have on site plans, there's maybe 2 or 3 parking spaces. If you go up that alley, some of those sites do have parking spaces behind them. We have clarified that those should only be used for employees, or if it's a medical office, the doctor parks there. But the sites are designed that your customers aren't using the alley to use that. That zoning district has those 40-foot wide lots, and whether you have 2 lots or 3 lots, they have 0 side foot setbacks. So usually those buildings are going from property line to property line, so there really isn't any access to that back alley for your customers, unless you're at the end of these blocks, and that's usually the sites that have that parking behind them. But as you go, if you drive that alley, those middle sites, they usually have their stormwater and there's maybe a loading area for garbage, there are dumpsters back there, but usually there's no parking spaces or anything because there's no access. And you're having to drive mid-block then to get to that parking if it is there.
And if I may, Mr. Roth, also add, that's the reason for the 24-foot easement that's going into the front of that building, is to connect future developments as it moves to the east, to give them access out to Melrose. Because 512 is limited access, and the county is not going to allow any curb cuts there. So that's why we required them to dedicate that 24-foot ingress and egress easement on this property. And so that'll allow for that flow of traffic from the east and west in front of the structures. Does that help?
Okay.
Any others?
Mr. Roth, you done?
Okay.
Okay. Now, the only thing I'm asking is, because right now where that doctor's office is, that place looks really bad across the street. Since everybody's parking, the business, so later on, if they can resod that across the street,
The doctor, you mean the veterinarian's office?
Yeah, which across the street from Taco Mobile.
Yes, which
Yeah,
isn't
well,
part of the
everybody
site.
can park in there now. If they can be kind enough and put some sod there, because I pass by there 2-3 times a day.
Oh, I see. Overflow parking from the restaurant right now has caused some of the
Right now where the
planting.
veterinarian is at, and you can see all that, it's been there very worn out, and they can maybe later on, fix it a little bit.
There's another design going on. I'm designing that thing, so it should be coming to you in January.
Okay. Good for you. That's it, I'm fine. Sir,
No?
you good?
I'd like to make a comment, however.
Yes, sir.
It's really nice to see a local business reinvesting back into its business. So I saw it when it first came there, and it's been successful over the few years. And anyway, it's good to see that a local business is reinvesting back into its future here in Sebastian.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want that to get lost anywhere in my comments. That was not anything derogatory about that. I love to see local businesses prosper, and it's great. I'm glad you're doing it, and you're the contractor for them, so pass it on to them.
I will.
It's the all-American story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It
exactly.
really is. It's an amazing story. It's like, wow. Only in America. Okay. If the commissioners are finished, then we will open the floor for anyone who is here who would like to speak in favor of the request. There's only one person in the audience, and he's very quiet tonight. Okay. If there is anyone here who would like to speak in opposition, seeing no one, and I believe our applicant has already responded to any of the issues raised by the staff and the public. Any summary from our staff, please?
Staff recommends approval with the revised recommendation sheet that was read into the record with those changes on number 7 for the 3 button signs and the correction that it is a one-way arrow sign pointing west. The staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Any further deliberation, questions, discussion among the commissioners? Then we will entertain a motion, please.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the site plan modification for the Taco Mobile Restaurant for additional parking at 825 Sebastian Boulevard, lots 1, 2, and 3, block 188, in Sebastian Highlands, Unit 6, at C512, CR 512 zoning district. With the staff recommendations of hold a public hearing regarding proposed additional parking kitchen addition with the 7 recommendations that staff proposed.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Okay. Mr. Yugen,
Yes.
Mr. Kizzelbosh,
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Roth,
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
and Mr. Carter.
Yes.
Okay.
So be it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
May all the commissioners have a wonderful holiday
Yeah.
and staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no unfinished business. Any public input? No public input. And no new business. Commissioners' matters.
I'm still kind of fuzzy about approving something, in a phase 2 when there's a visual impact to passing motorists and the community when we're asked to approve it. And I have no qualms about the staff reviewing it, but we're asked to review it without any, and approve it without any, seeing it. And it bothers me a bit when it's a site plan. I would wish that things like that would be included in the future. And I don't know if there was a reason to fast track this or to get it through quicker. I don't know that.
So it was considered a very small building addition. It was the phase 2. So I know the intent was to bring this before you so they could begin on the parking, because that is what they did want to do. And unfortunately, the application has been in our office longer than it should have for just a parking lot. So we wanted to get it before you so they could begin on that and their paperwork and the abandonment of easement. And that's why we did notice that if you did want, and you had included in your motion, we certainly can still bring that back. I can bring it before you for the, well, it was a motion, one of the conditions. But that was the intent anyways, Mr. Roth. Certainly on all of our new projects, we've always brought you the building elevations, the floor plans, building materials. So I think that because of the size, this is a 141 square foot building addition, and the intent was to get going on the parking lot. But I think this is the only one that you've had that's had without the elevation on a building.
So are we setting a square footage threshold on what we will see?
Not at all.
Okay.
I think girls see things differently, because
This is a public place.
I had the absolute vision, though, because of the way the roof structure is already there. I mean, I saw the completed wall.
That's all, yeah, but that's all you're hearing about. There's gonna be additional work done.
Yeah, I understand what you're
To
saying.
the west of it.
Things like that,
I
Well,
understand
before
what you're
any of
saying.
that's done, it has to go through the whole permitting
so we'll
process.
see it
and
again.
all the elevations, everything else has to be, I don't know why everyone's upset. We'll see it,
We're
Or
not
someone will
upset.
see it.
Did I sound upset, Mr. Carter?
Sir, sir.
We're here to protect the public.
I agree.
That's my main concern.
I understand that.
And the city.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I asked Dory before the meeting, but I'm going to bring it up so she can explain it. When the Wendy's was going to do their additional work, it
Yes.
came before the Planning and Zoning Board. Okay, so my question was, why didn't we see anything from the Taco Pizza Hut, the one where there's 3 stores together? So I asked her that question. I'm going to let her explain it to you.
So the Wendy's came before you because they were requesting a waiver. They didn't want to put the screening around the rooftop
Air conditioning.
air conditioning units. So they were before you because they were requesting relief from that code. You had denied them, and they did have to come back and put up those rooftop units, and it looks nice. Taco Bell was not requesting any waiver. All they did was change the color. Most of the stuff was interior. They weren't changing the amount of parking. There was no changes to their site. They were just changing the color, and the code does allow staff to approve. We have a process where they fill out a form. This is the new colors. We actually worked with them for a long time because they wanted to do bright red and white striped building. So we got kind of more of a mellow red, a soft purple. We did the best we could with their franchise colors. But it wasn't anything that the code requires to come before you, and they've done no site improvements. We're just requesting some of the landscaping over the years has gone, so we worked with them as part of their approval for their interior renovations to make sure that their originally approved site plan, landscaping is gonna be re-implanted, because they had no trees along US 1, so it's kind of a general upgrade. But that's why it didn't come before you, because there was nothing they were doing required review by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Dory.
And thank you for asking that question, because sometimes I think it's a real benefit to make these explanations publicly so that if anybody is out there listening, they understand as well. Thank you. Any other commissioners' matters? Yes?
If I can ask.
Yes.
If I can ask about the project just, I guess I'm gonna call it south of the library. It's kind of moving on, I see. Is it under a new owner that it finally moved to, I think it was, they were trying to sell it or something?
No, there's still, so it's a one-lot commercial subdivision that
It
you've
is,
approved. It's taken way longer than it should. And so in August, the project was brought before the special magistrate. They were given to October 1st to complete it, which also included final plating and final grading, as-built surveys. They are accruing a daily fine right now. So until such time that it's done, there's a penalty. And, when it's done, then we'll file the proper papers to stop him.
Because we had brought it up, I want to say over a year ago. I brought it up, we were talking about the fencings, the
Yeah.
silt fencing.
There's been no formal application or even any meetings for a particular use or proposed use for it too. So at this point, no commercial
One other
site on what it's gonna be.
question, I'm gonna say way east on Melrose, that neighborhood back in there, they just had some overlay done, I guess, in the asphalt. They did some patchwork and overlay. Is that gonna be the new city standard for some of these roads, or was that road able to handle that kind of and the other question, I'm not sure who Mr. Paul Carlisle is. Are you our new city engineer?
I'm the city manager.
Oh, I apologize, see? I asked for you to be at these meetings. Wow, that's great. I apologize for that. See, I'm not with it.
And I will tell you, I like to keep these boards focused on what your charter is. Your charter isn't about resurfacing, but I will answer this question for you. So the city had developed a 6-year road plan that used all the tools in the toolbox to pave roads. If you just use hot mix asphalt, you'll run out of money really quick.
Well, understood.
So we used several different treatments of resurfacing. We did regular hot mix overlay, we did full depth reclamation. Some of those roads were what they call a cape seal, which is a chip seal and a microsurfacing, and some of the roads got crack seal and microsurfacing. So those treatments will extend the life of those roads because of the score of those roads, the structure of the roads allowed us to use treatments, allowed us to do tremendous more work than we would have been able to do if we just did typical overlay. So yes, that is one of the things we're gonna be using. It's one of the tools where it's appropriate. We'll be using all of them. We'll be using the full depth, we'll be doing the reclaim, the mill and overlay. All of those things will be used throughout the city to extend the dollars that we get.
Great.
Gas tax
Looks
dollars.
great.
Looks good.
Looks ugly at first, always. It's like, it
Well,
looks
yeah,
like a
you know,
kid
it's,
went through
and
there
it's
with a black
different,
magic
you know,
marker.
it's different and people don't understand why did you use this on my road and that? And it's because of the curve. Asphalt doesn't fail linearly. It fails like this. So the quicker you can do a treatment, the cheaper it is to treat it. So you can therefore treat more and extend that life. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Thank you very much. Pleasure meeting you.
Mr. Reyes, yes, city manager, I can let you know that we do have a new city engineer on board,
heard
Mr. Ken Griffin, and we are getting him to start, he will be we're pulling him into our projects down in the Community Development Department. And I'm sure at the upcoming site plan meetings that we have, 2020, he'll be here at these meetings, helping with your review and our review of the plans, the projects.
Thank you very much.
I'm fine.
Mr. Reyes brought up a point, and I remembered I had written down the question. This is gonna test your memory a little bit. The property on Indian River Boulevard that they had proposed for a building house and an oyster bed.
Clams USA.
Yes,
Clams are us.
yes, that's gone well past their time period. Have they renewed anything, or will it now need to come back for another approval?
No, so that was a phase site plan, and they did implement phase one. And so once you implement a portion of that site plan, there is no expiration date. And I know that property's for sale, but somebody could come in and the next step would be they could pull permits for phase two and phase three. Phase two was the aquaculture part of the project, and then, of course, there was the house and the building. So if there was no work on no development of the site plan, the code allows the site, your approval is good for 12 months, and they can come back in then and request an extension for another year. I think the fee is half the application fee. So you kind of have 24 months to get started on something, to implement a phase, get some sort of infrastructure in. If not, the site plan can expire.
Your memory is better than mine. I didn't recall the 3 phases.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thank you, Dory. I know where it stands. So anyone coming in buying the property, they would still need to follow the.
Correct. Now, if somebody bought the
site
property and
plans.
decided to change the use and did not want to do aquaculture, just wanted to buy it for a single-family home, then that site plan, there may be a process that they would have to change the use, or,
That's
you know, it would
correct.
depend on what they're proposing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any staff matters?
No, Lisa just wanted to let you know, there was a few of you that had mentioned at the last meeting that you did not have copies of the comp plan. So she did make copies, and those are that you do. It's the housing and the future land use element will be in the initial of the year, January, February. We have a livability workshop in February 6th. So she just wanted to remind everybody to start reviewing the goals, objectives, and policies of those elements, future land use and housing. Kind of have your times, so we're not giving you information and you're familiar with what's in there when we give you the materials for our workshops.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I would just like to first wish everybody the best holiday possible. Stay close to your family so that they stay close to you, and we will adjourn this meeting.